The Mughal Empire was one of the great powers of its time, holding a large part of the Indian subcontinent for 2 centuries. Briefly, at its peak, it held sway over almost a quarter of the world's population. Its story began at the city of Andijan in Central Asia, a region that acted as the crossroads for trade between India, Europe, and China. In the 13th century, the Mongols unified it. A century later, it was split between warring Mongol successors. In the late 14th century came another great conqueror, Timur. He reunified Central Asia, expanding his empire from the Indian plains to Anatolia. As Timurid power waned in the 15th century, it fragmented into warring principalities. Samarkand, its former capital, Bukhara, Andijan, and others formed a network of Timurid cities. The lands to their east were called Moghalistan, the land of Mongols. To the north was the Uzbek king Shaybani. In 1494, the Timurid ruler of Andijan died early. His young son Babur inherited the city. When the ruler of Samarkand passed away without an heir, Babur captured it after a siege of 6 months. But fate had other plans. Sickness confined him to his bed for a few weeks. Restless nobles in Andijan rebelled, declaring him unfit to rule. Alarmed by the rebellion at home, he began marching back. While he was en route, Samarkand also rebelled. Babur had lost his home as well as his prize conquest, the former Timurid capital Samarkand. Left with just a few followers, he settled at Kujan, a minor fort between the 2 cities. 3 years passed. While efforts were underway to retake Andijan, the Uzbek king Shaybani captured Samarkand from the rebels who had driven out his garrison. The Uzbeks left behind only a thin garrison, expecting no threats. Babur had little to lose, but much to gain by acting boldly. He gathered his small force and marched to Samarkand by mountain passes less known. At night, a few hand-picked men scaled the walls and opened the gates. The garrison was caught unawares, and the city secured by daybreak. Messengers were immediately dispatched to rush reinforcements. He was able to gather 5,000 troops by the time the Uzbeks got word of this and returned. At the hotly fought Battle of Saripul, Babur lost thoroughly. He fled to the city with just a handful of survivors. After a few months of siege, he surrendered the city and married his sister Khanzada to Shaybani as the price for peace. Leaving Samarkand for the second time, he took refuge at Tashkent, ruled by his maternal uncle. With the help of his Mongol relatives, he tried to take back his home, Andijan. But after a year of campaigning with no success, he lost their support. Babur began to search for another city to go to. Kabul had been ruled by his paternal uncle. After his death, his infant son was deposed by an unpopular usurper. Babur swiftly marched to Kabul, capturing it easily. He spent the next few years learning to rule and leading expeditions against the various tribes around him. In 1508, the Uzbeks captured Herat from his Timurid relatives. Other Timurid cities to the north had already been overrun. With the fall of Herat, all Timurid princes except Babur had been pushed out by the Uzbeks. Their expansion upset the balance of power in the region. In Persia, Shah Ismail had established a new dynasty. To the Persians, the Uzbek expansion was a challenge to their sphere of influence. The nobles of Herat fled west and sought Safavid help. The Shah obliged. The Persian army overran the recent Uzbek conquests quickly, ending with the Battle of Merv. Shaybani was slain in this battle, and much of his army destroyed. Babur's sister, who had been married to Shaybani, was among those taken prisoner. The Shah's troops escorted her safely to Babur as a gesture of goodwill. Babur joined forces with the Safavids as a vassal. In a joint campaign, they captured the Fergana Valley and Samarkand. After the campaigning army departed, the Uzbeks launched a massive counterattack, recovering most of their losses. Babur and the Persians blamed each other for the loss, and ties deteriorated. On the Safavids' western border, they got involved in a new war with the Ottoman Turks. At the Battle of Chaldiran, the Safavids were soundly defeated. The Ottomans owed their victory to innovative use of new gunpowder weapons. Field artillery, mortars and muskets were devastating to the unprepared Safavids. This defeat weakened Shah Ismail gravely. To further drive a wedge between the Safavids and Babur, the Ottoman Sultan, Selim I, sent artillery experts to Babur. With Ottoman expertise, the Mughal army was trained in gunpowder warfare. Soldiers were trained to use muskets and cannons. Several years passed. When Shah Ismail died, the Uzbeks recaptured Herat. This blocked Mughal expansion westwards. For the Uzbeks, Babur's hold on Kabul made it equally difficult for them to expand east, marking a stable border. Around this time, the Lodi governor of Punjab, Daulat Khan Lodi, invited Babur to invade and promised his help. With the door to Central Asia closed, Babur's attention had already turned east to Delhi. The Delhi Sultanate emerged as a power in the early 13th century. Over time, its expansion made it too large to be centrally ruled, breaking apart into multiple sultanates. Weakened by infighting, it was invaded by Timur in 1399. He burned its capital, Delhi, and massacred most of its people. It recovered slowly from its destruction over the next century during the Lodi dynasty. In 1517, the Lodis fought another civil war. Ibrahim Lodi emerged victorious, but he was a weak ruler with many enemies within his court. The neighbouring king of Mewar, Rana Sanga, pounced on this weakness and annexed lands west of Delhi. Ibrahim Lodi led 2 campaigns against him, once in 1518 and again in 1519. Both ended in defeats. Mewar's army was smaller, but led by good generals, it was more than a match. Babur was quick to notice this weakness and sacked Bajor, a border province, in the same year. This provoked no response from Delhi, distracted by losses against the Rana. In the next few years, the Mughals launched several more raids, facing no opposition. Daulat Khan Lodi's request to intervene was the best opportunity Babur would ever get. As a descendant of Timur, Babur sent an envoy to Ibrahim Lodi, demanding he surrender the provinces of Punjab. His envoy was dismissed without response. Babur's patience ran out. He marched to Lahore, the capital of the region. It turned out to be poorly defended, falling quickly. He assigned some Lodi nobles who swore loyalty to hold it, but they were unable to hold the city after his departure. Given Mughal troops as reinforcements, they attempted to attack Ibrahim Lodi at Delhi. They proved utterly incapable. Babur now took personal command of the campaign, departing from Kabul with all his men in November 1525. Recapturing Lahore, they recruited more troops. They marched east to the river Yamuna and continued south along the riverbank. A Lodi vanguard of 5,000 marched ahead of the main Lodi army to ambush the Mughals. Babur sent half his army to face this. The Mughal cavalry marched by night without rest. At dawn, they surprised and destroyed the Delhi army's vanguard, chasing survivors right till their camp. The armies closed in near the town of Panipat, about 70 kilometers north of Delhi. The Mughals deployed with Panipat on their right and dug a deep ditch on the left. The Lodi army was at low morale from the loss of their vanguard. They did not form up for battle right away, waiting as reinforcements trickled in. To force the Lodis to give battle, the Mughals began raiding the Lodi camp frequently in small parties. They would cut and carry off the heads of the slain Lodi troops. This further unsettled the Lodi army, and a week later, on April 20th, they formed up for battle. The Mughal army deployed in its usual Mongol-style formation. It was made up of a centre, left and right divisions, reserves in the rear, and 2 small flanking parties. Humayun commanded the right wing, Sultan Mirza commanded the left, Babur commanded the centre. Along the front of the line, cannons were mounted on carts, distributed evenly. Infantry with muskets stood between the cannons, protected by thick ropes of raw hide joining the carts. These obstacles blocked enemy troops trying to charge in. Around 4,000 musketeers formed the centre. The rest of the army was cavalry, split evenly on the 2 wings and the reserves. Horse archers were posted in small flanking parties further beyond the wings. His total strength was around 15,000. Sources claim the Lodi army to have exaggerated strength of 100 or 200,000 soldiers, but these numbers are not plausible. With the destruction of their vanguard, their strength at Panipat is estimated to be 20,000. It consisted of infantry, cavalry, and elephants. The war elephants were in the first line, designed to break enemy lines. The Lodis had no artillery or muskets, nor any experience of facing gunpowder weapons. With their numerical superiority, the Lodi army advanced with a strong left wing, opposite to the Mughal right wing. Babur noted this and sent some reserves to the right to strengthen it. As the Lodi army closed in, their attack was blunted by the carts breaking their charge. This loss of momentum proved fatal. The rear ranks collided with the front ranks, unable to proceed further. Babur's flanking parties began their attacks on this dense crowd of men, elephants and horses. Simultaneously, the Mughal artillery opened fire with a thunderous roar. Their immobility and crowding made the Lodi troops an easy target for artillery. The Lodi elephants came under fire from cannonballs, guns and arrows from expert horse archers. Some were killed on the spot, others panicked. These panicking elephants turned around and crashed through their own soldiers looking for an escape. This thoroughly disordered the Lodi rear. Lodi troops in both wings retreated towards the centre, fleeing from flanks. The fighting had begun early in the morning and continued past noon. For 3 hours they fought back bravely, holding firm in the face of heavy fire. In a desperate move, Sultan Ibrahim Lodi moved to the front to rally his troops. As he advanced, he was hit by a bullet and fell off his horse. Seeing their king missing, the army's cohesion disintegrated. A general panic followed, and soldiers took to flight. Ibrahim's body was found later. The head was cut off, taken to Babur. By his estimates, 5,000 Lodi troops were killed in the battle. An enormous toll for the Lodi army. Their camp and treasure was captured. The death of the Sultan collapsed the tottering sultanate. Delhi surrendered on April 25th. Babur had repeated Timur's victory. The Mughals were occupied, restoring order in their new lands for the rest of the year. While this was a great victory, 2 grave threats remained: the confederacy of Rana Sanga to his west, and the remainder of the Delhi Sultanate to his east. In the next couple of years, Babur would have to fight both, laying the foundation of the Mughal Empire.